the thing that stood out to me the most in that scene, I think, was the power that Daenerys has. Because if you think about what we know about the other women that were around that table, think about it seriously, and how they have dominated scenes when it's just them, and they have dominated the conversation of anyone they're talking to. Olenna, for Christ's sake, we know is like just a mastermind and tells it like it is, shoots it straight.
Fucking dragon.
Be a fucking dragon.
That was so great.
Yara was for all intents and purposes the king of the Salt Throne. You know what
she's
I mean?
such a badass.
And she's such a badass.
Yep.
And then you had Ilaria, who staged a coup and is not afraid to assassinate a Lannister child. I mean, like, all three of them are so powerful. But when Daenerys talks, they all listen. And then Daenerys says very straightforward, like, are we good with this?
Yeah.
And they're all just kind of like, yeah.
And is that because
all right, then.
And is that because they respect her power, or they realize that, hey, this is the best way we have to get back at the Lannisters?
I read
that
it as
entire
power.
But that entire group there has been hurt by the Lannister family.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the Martells have a lot going on.
That's true.
The
That's
Tyrells as well. Like, I mean, Cersei blew up the Sept, and there was a bunch of Tyrells there. So,
Yeah.
is it power, or is it they realize that they all have the same end game?
And this lady's got 3 dragons.
Yeah, there's that too.
I think they do, but they're the heads of their houses now, too, right? And they haven't done that through anything other than being powerful and being stronger than the men that used to rule, being smarter than. And Olenna kind of says that. Like, I'm here for a reason. And it's not because, what did all these men have in common? She essentially says they were dumb. Don't be dumb. You have dragons and go fucking get the King's Landing, right? I mean, that's what she says, essentially. So let's pivot. I think, so I kind of wrote them down, so we'll just roll. We can go to the Jorah scene, right? Where,
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, first let's talk about that transition
Yeah.
out of the Jorah scene. I was blown away by that. Because
Oh,
it went
so
from,
gross.
like, peeling off the grayscale to all of a sudden eating a
They're
pot
really
pie.
just in
Yeah.
general
It was like,
fucking with us on the
man.
transitions this
Dude,
year,
yeah.
aren't they?
I didn't even realize it happened until they pulled
Yeah.
out, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Sam has become like the comedic relief, but not intentionally. It's just all the jobs he's given, right? So,
Yeah.
like, first reaction though when you saw Jorah.
Unceremonious, maybe,
Yeah.
for a second, just to go from, and not in a bad way or anything necessarily, but just to go from last week's just an arm through a meal door, you know, reaching out to somebody, and you're like, oh shit, I think that's Jorah. We all knew that was
Yeah.
Jorah.
The
But
voice.
just cut to, like, you know, them examining Jorah. It's like, well, where did this come from? Like, last week we saw no indication that Sam wanted to further investigate the human behind that arm, behind that door, and then all of a sudden now they're in a room together. Was that just like a standard rounds of the doctor, of the Grand Maester, you know, making the rounds to check on all of his patients, and Sam just happened to be in there at the same time, and then I think I just answered my own question. And then after learning that he was Jorah, or he was Sir Mormont's son, he realized that he had a duty to help him. But yeah, I would say just unceremonious in the fact that we just kind of wiped to that scene, and then it was just Jorah shirtless, and we're like, oh fuck, that's spread.
Yeah, that was a strange scene. Yeah, and then we come back to it, right? But I think, like, Sam's an interesting character to me because he wants to give so much to everybody he meets. Essentially, like, he was like, how can we not help this person when Maester Slughorn, we'll call him, essentially is like, yeah, he's completely unhelpful, you should just cut your arm off, let's go, what are we doing here? And he's like, alright, I'll come back. And then he finds out, yeah, who his lineage is, and he's like, I gotta help this person. And of course, when he's reading at like 2 a.m. or whatever, he's like, this is important, I gotta tell Jon. So I just feel like his character is very cool to watch kind of grow because he knows he can be helpful now in his, especially in his position with all the knowledge at his disposal at the Citadel.
The man in the chair.
Yeah, the man in the chair. Here we go.
So, also, quick, another side, while we're on this Sam train of thought, when the Grand Maester is walking around pulling books, and he slightly says something to Sam in the tune of, you know, trying to write down all the history that happened since Robert I, you know, called it something really long and convoluted, and he's like, can you think of a better name for it? And Sam's like, maybe something more poetic? And it's like, you know he wants to say Game of Thrones, and you're like, that's sort of, I think, a fan service to everyone who assumes.
I mean, it's a
that
big fan theory that Sam
wrote it.
Tarley is the one who is writing these books.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
I feel like that's all we're gonna get, like just that sort of passing scene, and that was like maybe that's what's
I
happening.
mean, there's that, and if you paid enough attention, the opening sequence is very much so. There's that giant chandelier in the Citadel, like that is very much where the opening sequence takes place at.
Right.
And it always changes, which is so cool. But
it would be a neat tie-in. I feel like why not? You know, at this
could
point.
be a good way to like put a bow on the series. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like at the very end and stuff. So
yeah.
Okay, so back to Jorah and Sam.
You're just cutting off some grayscale.
Jesus Christ,
that was
scene.
hard to watch.
Yeah.
Holy fuck!
Could you just be quiet? Could
Yeah.
you be quieter?
Oh my god!
Just bite down on this leather.
Yeah.
Oh god!
And like Jorah's facial expressions during that entire time, I mean, spot on. Like that actor nailed it.
It's what's interesting to me about that scene too is there was no mention of dragon glass. Maybe I had expected, and there was wild fan theories across the internet last week about the page that was on the left of what he was reading about the dragon glass mentioned that it could stop the spread of infectious diseases, but he never brought that up, and so are we to assume that maybe that's not necessarily the case, or we're not going to touch on that any further, or maybe this treatment that he just got isn't going to take, and they have to do more extreme measures, and that's when the dragon glass gets... But then you're like, we only have 7 episodes to get there.
Yeah, where are we going to go?
If he's going to get cured, he should get cured, right? Or, you know what I mean? So,
well, and that's the interesting thing, too. Like, if he gets cured, how does he get cured? Like, does it just stop the spread of the grayscale? Does he always then have that? Or does the grayscale go away? Or does it change into something else?
Yeah.
And this goes back into, I think, the first episode we recorded, we were talking about Victorian Greyjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I think this is kind of how we bring that character into the books. I mean, into the TV show.
Yeah.
What
does Jorah do in the books that's different? Does he
Not a lot.
contract grayscale?
He actually contracts grayscale by rescuing Tyrion, actually.
So similar.
It's a similar... Yeah, his character is very similar
Does
from the TV show to the books.
Does he come back from it? I guess he could still be wandering the desert.
I mean, at this point, yeah, because we're so far ahead.
Past the books.
Yeah, we're so far past the books at this point.
I think there's still a lot of possibility that it gets healed, mainly because Sam's put together that Shireen was there. So I think he did more digging and was like, maybe this is exactly what happened, and they tried it and it worked on her. Why can't it work on Jorah? But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
It seems to be the focus of Sam's arc for now, and so for the next few episodes at least, I think in that first episode we saw Sam being the man in the chair for Jon and sending the Raven to say, hey, there's dragonglass here.
Which
and,
made it.
Yeah, which made it, yeah. I like that Jon was like, all right, guys, I got 2 messages. I feel like I had to call the meeting.
That's a big fucking deal. 2 ravens made it through the wall.
So I'm blowing up, guys.
Yeah. Notifications.
So for the next few episodes at least, I think we're going to see the team up of Sam and Jorah. And so what I think is cool, and I didn't read the books, so John, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's kind of neat right now is the freedom that the showrunners have to make this more TV in a smart way, where they were sort of locked in previously to at least telling in spirit the books and having major plot points get us to the next point in the story, which typically meant that this character had to team up with this character to get us there. Where we're at now, though, is this like uncharted territory where they could say, wouldn't it be cool if these 2 characters got together? And if these 2 characters got together, what would the outcome be? And so now we're seeing the Jorah and Sam corner of it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And segue maybe. Nope. I want to save Jon Snow and Daenerys for the last topic.
All right, let's talk about some dire wolves.
Yeah,
Some Arya, yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
We would be remiss if we didn't start by saying Hot Pie.
Yeah.
Our boy Hot Pie.
Man, that was so
Cameo.
good. That was great.
Great to see that guy again.
He's
man.
not dead.
Not dead, right? He's doing good. And that, you know what? Great fucking line from Arya, too, by the way. When she's like, the trick is browning the butter. And then Arya's like, I didn't do that. He's like, oh, have you baked pies? And she was like, 1 or 2.
Yeah, no, I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Meat
I
pies.
think it was unnecessary for the Frey pie, maybe.
It was a really well acted scene, though, I thought, between the Hot Pie and Arya, where you could tell Hot Pie had so many questions for Arya.
Yeah.
Where have you been? And, why do you seem so different? And, Arya just sort of that lifeless look behind her eyes right now, that, dead set. she looked different than the Arya we saw last week hanging out with Ed Sheeran. You know what I mean? Like, she's a little bit more back on mission and more serious at that time that she meets Hot Pie.
Yeah, and Hope is back. When he says the Boltons don't have Winterfell, your brother's alive, she's like, what the shit, my world is rocked. I mean, like, what else are you supposed to do? She's like, I'm going to go kill the queen. Maybe not.
I love that Hot Pie broke that news.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing that kind of came to light with that scene in particular. It's like, it's hard to imagine, as show watchers, we, like, know all this stuff already, right? But sometimes you got to put yourself in the perspective of some of these characters, like, Westeros is a big place.
Yeah.
These folks don't know everything.
Absolutely. There was another example of that on this show, too, where, not to jump too far, but a quick little aside, when Qyburn is walking Cersei through the catacombs and shows him the dragon and mentions that, well, I heard that in Marine, Daenerys' dragons were hit with spears. And I was like, that's very specific.
Yeah,
who told you that?
Yeah.
Like, how did that news get? Is there a Gazette?
But what's funny is, like, we hear that earlier.
Westeros Gazette is a cool potential name for a podcast.
There we go.
Put a pin in that.
Westeros Gazette.
Put a pin in that. I like that a lot.
I think we're done. That's all the brainstorming.
All right, so let's get back to Arya.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about the direwolf scene, I think, too, right?
I just thought it was so cool to see Nymeria, who had kind of grown up, right? And we had confirmed that it was Nymeria based on the post-credit scenes with the showrunners. They mentioned, like, Nymeria leaves her alone, but it's
a throwback to a much earlier scene from season 1, obviously, because Ned was still alive.
Mm-hmm.
But those last words, it's like, that's not you. That's important. Because in season 1, it was close to the end of season 1, but Ned was sitting down with Arya at King's Landing, talking about how you'll be this highborn lady, and you know, your sons and daughters will be lords and ladies, and she was like, but that's not me. And so that callback was just, there were a lot of callbacks in this episode that were just so good. If you're paying attention, everything's coming full circle, which kudos to the writers, because this had to have been planned out at some point.
I think it's big for Arya to see the essentially mirror of herself and her direwolf also be a loner. Like, she has a pack, but she's definitely like a scavenger, a nomad. She's looking out for herself. She's doing her thing. I don't think this is the last time we see her, right? They wouldn't make a big reveal like, oh shit, Nymeria is back. And then be like, yeah, never mind. She's not going to show up ever again.
Did this scene... So in my eyes, I read it this way. And I want to be wrong. So tell me that I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Did this scene, like, put Arya on... Did this course change her again? So she was on her way to King's Landing, okay? And when she got to that inn and met Hot Pie and learned that Jon had won the Battle of the Bastards and now is the King of the North, she's like, shit, okay, I gotta go home. I gotta go see Jon and Sansa. And on her way back, she meets Nymeria, and Nymeria doesn't recognize her. And there's that moment where she
It's
says...
not doesn't recognize.
Well, yeah, it doesn't...
It's not that. They're both very different at this point. Their purposes are different.
Nymeria is sort of like... It's sort of... I took it as a microcosm of Arya's arc, where you know, Arya sort of started as this domesticated, sort of forced into being a lady. Now she's this wild wolf who is out on her own journey to exact revenge or whatever her story arc is. And did Nymeria remind her of that? And she's like, that's not you. And was she talking about herself? And if she was talking about herself, does that make her go, I'm not Arya Stark anymore. I'm not this girl who's going to go back home to see Jon and Sansa. Like, I need to finish my mission. I need to be this wild wolf. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of took it to be that. Is that crazy?
No, I don't think so. It's very much, I mean, she turned around after that. She's now heading back south as far as we know. I mean,
is she?
I think that's what I read at the end of that scene.
I will challenge what you're thinking with a metaphor. And I will say that Nymeria is her incarnation, right, as a direwolf. And her finding her pack is going to remind Arya that she needs to be with her family if they're still alive. She's always operated under the assumption that all of her family is dead, right? Catelyn Robb died at the Red Wedding. She left. She didn't know what happened to Sansa. She assumed Bran probably died in some battle later on, and Jon's at the wall.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably fighting off wild things or something, or dead. So her only option was to go find Jon at the wall now that she knows he's alive. Maybe that'll change her course, and she'll be like, yes, I need to find my family. And how badass, though, would that be as a bargaining chip for Jon and everybody to be like, holy shit, we also have this assassin who can turn into people?
I know, I still want that. Like, that would be absolutely
I agree.
amazing.
I thought it was such